Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Ghazali's Jawahir al-Quran wa Durr al-Juz of Quran Spares, and we are reading from Surah Ar-Rahman. In the last session, we have reached and talked about the two easts and the two wests. That's where it ended. And the customary, I would say, or at least there's an interpretation that this is the difference, the 2 points of sunrise and sunset in the summer and winter. And in between the two sessions, it occurred to me that this cannot be the case. In support of what I said this could be a reference to the change in rotation, while it might not be conceivable at this stage. This is not. I gave the example of the yo-yo, how it rotates in one direction when it's really going, let's say, outward and inward, returning. It rotates in the opposite direction. A weakening in black matter, a weakening in the forces that push the universe spreading out at a speed that we cannot even imagine. Our sun, the speed of our sun going around the galaxy, the Milky Way, has been estimated around 500,000 miles per hour. A weakening in these galactic forces would mean that this cannot go on forever, and that ultimately there is a reversal of this order. So the sun would rise, and this is, as I said in the previous session, the sun would rise in the opposite direction from the west rather than from the east. Wallah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. This is a sign of the day of judgment. And we have the question that will be raised many times, 31 times in total. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ? Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? Now we are in for another miracle that the Qur'an mentions. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. He merges, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala merges the two bodies of water. You might find some translations might add in between brackets fresh and salty water. Yet between them is a barrier they never cross. It makes sense. It makes sense not in the absolute sense. It makes sense if your reference point is Surah Al-Furqan 25:53, Surah 25, Surah Al-Furqan, verse 53. This verse would color one's understanding of Marj al-Bahr. And not all exegetes subscribe to this notion that it is about fresh and salt water. As in Surah Al-Furqan, وَهُوَ الَّذِي مَرْجَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ هَذَا عَذْبٌ فُرَاتٌ وَهَذَا مِلْحٌ أُجَاجٌ وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخًا وَحِجْرًا. In this verse, Surah Al-Furqan, it is He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who merged the two bodies of water. One is fresh, sweet, and the one is salty, bitter, even salt. And He created between them a barrier, and each side would remain as is. This is a miracle, and this is where fresh water flowing from rivers. And not only that, even you will find that there are fresh water springs inside salty seas, like at the bottom of the sea there is fresh water. And there's like a tiny microclimate where specific types of fish would live in that fresh water, and they don't venture outside. They probably would die. And the other types of fish that live in salty water, they don't venture into that fresh water. So what do we have here in Marj al-Bahrayni Yaltaqiyan? We do have in many places around the world, if we talk about the oceans, the Pacific versus the Atlantic Ocean, where they meet, there's almost like an invisible wall between them. They don't flow into each other, they don't merge, they don't mix, and they have different density, they have different salinity, and obviously as a result a different color, and also they flow differently, and thus they do not mix, they don't merge. There's like a vertical helical line as it is described. I think this is extremely important to remember as we are reading this verse. This is not the only way why oceans or seas do not merge. We have the thermocline. The thermoclines is where, for example, the Gulf Stream versus the North Atlantic Ocean. The Gulf Stream, we talk about south of, like between Mexico and the United States, where the Gulf, one might think of west of Florida, all the way to south of the southern states in the United States, bordering the Gulf Stream. That's because of difference in temperature, and they do have different microclimates in both. So the where it is warm is different from where it is cold. You have between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. There was a scientist, Jack Cousteau. While he was diving, he saw the difference between the both bodies of water, between the Caribbean and the Atlantic, between the North and Baltic seas, and it's visible near the city of or the town of Skagen, the Dane town in Denmark. I've noticed it was not really on my mind when I went to an aquarium in South Africa, Cape Town, and in the aquarium there is an exhibit like one, let's call it like a small showroom where you have a screen, and the screen is split into two halves, literally two different videos, if you will, but on one screen showing the Atlantic and showing the Indian Ocean. And it's very vivid, different temperature, different microclimate, more types of fish in the Indian Ocean, fewer kinds of fish in the Atlantic. But the ones that live in the Atlantic are huge. The ones that live in the Indian Ocean are smaller, but it's obvious. And that's when I also remembered this particular verse that we are discussing right now. مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. As this has been almost 2 decades ago, but I still remember this very well. So to sum up, this particular verse refers to two bodies of water. And the difference between this and the one in Surah Al-Furqan is that there it speaks about fresh water and salty water. Here, two different salty ocean seas, as we have mentioned, and also it does exist in within the same. When we talk about two rivers or three rivers, when they meet, it's the same type of water, but they do not mix. That's also because of density, the composition, and sometimes very vivid colors, different colors. And I, as always, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. And I should have mentioning the back to the with your permission, just occurred to me when we speak about the two with the two east and two west. The argument based on the season doesn't work on the equator, where almost you have the 12 hours daylight, almost the same, and there are no seasons there, wet season versus dry season, but they are not seasons per se. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان? Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان. This is, I would say, another proof that we speak about salty waters, because the pearls out of both waters come forth pearls and coral. Pearls and coral, they exist in salty water only, except that now they can artificially create fresh water pearls. But in nature, both exist in salty water. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان? Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? And elsewhere in the Qur'an, it does speak about the tender flesh of fish. That's basically a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also the pearls that people use to have necklaces, subhanallah. So not only we have that which is functional, but also adornment. And this is important, at least. فَمَن يُنَشَّأْ فِي الْحِلْيَةِ, subhanallah. This is about women having different psyches. This does not diminish neither their humanity nor their capacity, but I think now people are realizing that there is a myth behind women being pushed to become achievers, denying their own biological clock that is ticking all the time. By the time they finish, nowadays, if they finish graduate school and they go to the job market and postpone marriage and they postpone pregnancy and all these things, they might end up childless. And any woman who says I don't want to, she is simply denying her own nature. A gynecologist who after basically retirement, she ventured into medical ethics, and she wrote a doctoral dissertation comparing Judaism, Christianity, and Islam about birth and death. And I became part of the picture about the Islamic part, advising her on the Islamic part, but she confessed that her husband convinced her that as a gynecologist, she does not need to become pregnant herself because she really is delivering all those babies as her babies. And ultimately, she told me that once all of this was gone, at one point she started crying. She told me she puts her head on the pillow. She's without anyone. She just passed away a couple of months ago. Maybe she was 95, 96 years old. Her husband divorced her and went to younger, greener pastures, a physician himself. And literally there was only one woman, a very distant relative of hers. That's it. That's someone who just helped thousands of women give birth. She herself did not. So don't lie to yourself. She became the first head of gynecology department in her area in Switzerland, became international speaker. She was the one who developed child gynecology, like for younger girls. At any rate, women love to have pairs and whatever is the adornment. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان? Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام. To him belong the ships with raised sails, sailing through the seas like mountains. In fact, today, when we see these massive cargo ships, if you think about it, everything in the universe belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanallah, things are unfolding according to divine plan, except that sometimes we mess up, we transgress, while we see all these signs around us, including in the seas. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So you have all these things at your service, all these signs at your service, the fruits, the pearls, the universe, and ultimately you die. كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. Every being on earth is bound to perish. Every being, kull, human being, and others. In fact, the whole universe will come to an end, and there will be something new. يوم تبدل الأرض غير الأرض والسماوات. The earth will be changed, the heavens will be changed, and ultimately we will be resurrected. But it's going to be in a way that is fit for an eternal life. For those who are destined for paradise, heading to paradise, they have accepted pure monotheism, following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the path of the Prophet ﷺ, Qur'an and the Sunnah. Inshallah, they'll be destined to paradise. It's going to be a serious problem to have an eternal life in hellfire. كل من عليها فان. Every living being is a mortal. Exercise to the contrary. Take care of your health. But even when you take care of your health, it's inevitable. كل من عليها فان. ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. Only your Lord Himself, full of majesty and honor, will remain forever. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Literally your Lord's face, but of course it has to be interpreted allegorically. ليس كمثله شيء. It's just like the hand of God, the face of God. And this death is also a favor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that God bestows on humanity, especially when we have tyrants. Imagine if tyrants do not die. Imagine if Hitler did not die. You would wish that he died earlier. You'd wish that he did not exist, but people are subjected to different tests. And this death makes all people equal. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Then which of your Lord's favors will you both deny? sufficed inshallah for this session. In the next session we'll begin with verse 29 بإذن الله عز وجل. Until then سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.